Go live then in three, two, one.
All right, are we good? Okay, guys, welcome to another episode of Subtle Asian Voices. I am your host, Daphne, and today we are very lucky to have my
Go
friend,
live.
Dr. Wesley Wang, on this podcast, kicking off our series on career development with Subtle Asian Voices. So, the idea with this series is that we're going to interview people from different careers and get their perspective on their journeys. And then today, we get to talk to Wesley about his journey into physical therapy. So, Wesley, why don't you introduce yourself? Give us your little bit of background, things like that.
Cool. Thanks for having me, Daphne. So my name is Wesley, born and raised in Maryland, went to Maryland for undergrad. Physical therapy school, I went to Franklin Pierce University in New Hampshire, graduated 2015. I went to work for kind of a traditional outpatient model for about 2 years, year and a half, 2 years. Decided it wasn't for me. And then I joined up with a friend of mine at like a cash-based physical therapy facility, and pretty much been doing my own thing for a little over 3 years now. So I've been at Healthy Baller, working primarily with high school, college level athletes, specializing in ACL rehab. So I've been there for about 3 years now, and I will never go back to the other side.
I can only imagine. Wes, I've seen your career progression from like the day one when I was in college and trying to apply to PT school. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what made you want to enter physical therapy in the first place?
Yeah, so I guess my journey to physical therapy is a little bit different since I was an economics major at Maryland. My whole life I was just thought I was going to do business and consulting and all that kind of stuff. But right after I graduated in 2009, I was playing basketball with some friends and ended up tearing my right ACL. That's when I first got exposed to the field and kind of, just going through the rehab process and my own journey of, the brace and post-op and all that kind of stuff, and then going to walking and then running and then back on the basketball court. And I just really, really enjoy the process. And I would go to rehab in the mornings, and then I would metro for an hour to my job that I hated, and kind of just like, you have a lot of thinking time and just thinking about what I wanted to do for the next 40 years of my life. And I had a friend of mine in college who would always ask me, what do you want to do for the next 40 years of your life? I didn't really think about it too much. When you're 19, you're kind of just like, whatever. Got a little older, a little wiser, I guess, and ended up changing careers. So I went to, I did Montgomery Community College for 2 years, and then I went to PT school after that. So it was obviously a tough decision to basically forego 5 years of salary to go negative money, basically for debt and all that tuition, all that kind of stuff. So it was a tough decision to make, but I'm very glad I did it.
So was the final push just you sitting on the metro contemplating and be like, okay, I want to actually enjoy my life for the next 40 years? Because I remember
Yes.
talking to you at like 3 a.m. studying for anatomy exams at like in college. And you were saying that, what are you doing going back to school? How old were you when you went back to school, Wesley?
Oh, 23, I think 22, 23 for my prereqs at community college.
Okay, gotcha. When you're still young. So, and then here you are years later. Um, so can you describe what you do at work day to day? Like, can you tell us what your day is like from start to finish? It'll be great to get our viewers to get to know what physical therapy is on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. So, for us, like we're very niched, I guess, for athletes. So I don't start till pretty late. I don't start my days till usually like 10:30, but I don't get off of work until 7 p.m., sometimes even 8 p.m. And then on top of that, we have all like the admin work that we have to do, marketing, my online stuff that I have to work on as well. So it's like a kind of it is a 7 day a week job. But as far as like actual treatments goes, I'm there for 1037. I see anywhere between like 6 to 8 patients a day. Usually try and get in a lift. But also for me, also right now going through my own rehab. So trying to make sure I block out time for my own rehab as well. But yeah, that's a normal day. The majority of my patients are ACLs, probably about 70% are ACLs right now. The winter time is usually a little more busy because I have my college athletes are back, and usually they're freaks of nature and they want to grind like 3-4 days a week. So I'm pretty busy volume wise at this point in time, seeing probably about 30-ish, 30, 35 a week, which for us is pretty busy.
Gotcha. So how many patients do you typically see a day from 10 to 7?
Between 6 and 8. I mean, there's definitely some slower days. And there are some days I think one day last week I saw 9. I think the max I've seen in one day is 10, and I don't want to do that on a regular basis. So it's just a lot. You know, I didn't switch to this model of PT for the sake of seeing high volumes. We did it for the sake of like better quality of care, seeing every patient for an hour. So it's just a different model of physical therapy.
So can you describe, based on your current model now, how different your initial model was? So you said you worked in a typical outpatient facility. Not many of our viewers might know what that means, because I mean, I'm in physical therapy as well, so I have an idea of the grind there. But why don't you describe that experience for us?
Yeah, so traditional models typically take insurances, and I would say for the most part, treatment time for each PT to patient is about 15 to 30 minutes. That's probably on average. If you're in a really bad place, it can be like 10 minutes. So those places we typically will call them like more volume based, where you're expected to see, I would say on average, 55 to 60 patients a week, something along those lines. And there's typically requirements for like billing requirements and limit volume requirements as what you need to see in a week. We don't have that here at our facility. I see every single patient for an hour. And on top of that, like our facility is definitely much more conducive for athletes. We have a 40-yard turf space. We have a pretty extensive weight room, squat racks, actual weights to get the athletes stronger, get them moving, sprinting, cutting, all the stuff that makes them great and what they need to get back into doing. At my last facility, we had pretty much no open space. The heaviest dumbbell we had was 10 pounds, heaviest kettlebell was 15 pounds. And for ACL rehab or honestly any type of lower extremity rehab, you need to pick up heavy weights. I'm a firm believer in that. So it's definitely just it's a completely different vibe when you walk in. You know, traditional models also, like we joke around, like the PT outfit is khakis and polos. I wear sweatpants and a t-shirt and a hoodie to work every single day. And, I love it because I like to get up and move with my patients. I want to push them. I want to challenge them. I want to make sure I'm preparing them. My job is to prepare them for the demands of sports. And working with, Division I athletes and also pro level athletes, like I got to get in there and run around with them. So it's just a completely different model than, I guess, the more traditional models, which is still, 95% of places out there are considered to be more traditional.
Okay. Yeah, the traditional model. I can't imagine working there because I used to work at one and then trying to get into a squat position in tight khakis. So for women, it's a little bit harder because I feel like for men, you have the options of like Lululemon now, which has really great like elastic pants, whereas women just like we're just stuck in like that form fitting kind of environment. So it's really hard to move around. And like I just recently switched to a job where I could wear leggings all the time. It was amazing. So I can only imagine how much easier it is for you to run around athletes too. So with that being said, then how old are your athletes typically? From like, I know you said high school to college. Do you get anyone older?
Yeah, I get the occasional adult, and even some pros. Like I'm working with a pro basketball player right now, so she's 26, 27. And then I like a recent graduate, so she's 22, 23. And occasionally I'll get adults here and there. But 90 to 95% of mine are probably like high school and college level athletes.
Okay, gotcha. And is any specific sport that you focus on versus?
Not by choice, but just the nature of our facility and the owners, or particularly one of the owners. So he sends me anytime one of his girls get hurt, he'll send them to me. He's really, really well known in like the female lacrosse world, and being in Maryland, it's a hub for lacrosse athletes. So the majority of my athletes are female lacrosse players, but I do still see soccer and basketball. That's probably the three most that I see.
Okay, gotcha. And do you feel like for the most part, you said you work with a lot of like female athletes too, right? So what is their progression like in terms of like start to finish? How long do they typically take how long do they stay with you?
It's definitely highly variable. Like I'll see some lucky enough. I like to get them post-op just because I have like I guess a structured way of doing things for ACL rehab. Like I'm pretty structured, and I like to, everyone's got their different ways of doing things, and I believe in the way that what I'm doing. So I would love to get them immediately post-op, and if I can get them all the way back, I'm comfortable progressing them all the way back to full return to sport. So, and that can be anywhere between 9 months and 15 months. So it really just varies depending on when you're ready and when you pass all my tests.
Gotcha. So now that we're on the topic of ACL synthetic rehab, we have a question about what is your typical ACL rehab like from the audience? Thanks, Norman.
I guess for me personally, or for
Just in
somebody.
general, I guess. I mean, I guess you personally now because you're going through it on your own, right?
Yeah. I mean, generically speaking, like for someone at my stage, since I'm 2 weeks post-op, like it's just all about setting the foundation, getting the swelling down, getting my quads going. So I do a lot of stim, I do a lot of quad squeezes, things like that, and I work on my bending and straightening every single day. And then after that, like as simply put as it is just getting very, very strong. I think that specifically in the ACL world, it's a very misunderstood area in regards to exactly how strong I need to be. And I think a lot of athletes who come from other facilities and they come in to see me and they go through an hour session with me, the first like follow up, I usually, when I see them, they're always like, my legs are dead. I'm like, yeah, that's what you should feel. That's what rehab should look like. Like we're picking up 80 pounds for single leg stuff. And then we're back squatting 175, 180 pounds. Like even if you're a female, like we're getting you very, very strong. And I think people just underestimate exactly how much work it requires in order to hit every single detail, in order for me to ensure that I'm not putting you at risk for a second tear, which we know nowadays is, every 20 to 25% of people are suffering a second tear, like myself.
Yeah, I can definitely feel that can be really frustrating for an athlete too. When you've been out for so long training your initial rehab, and then after that having to re-tear and then stopping your progress and then on must be frustrating for your athletes too. And I'm sure like it's frustrating for you as a PT to have to go through that and watch them in the case that ever happens, right? So in terms of that, then let's move on to career changes and specifically that journey. So can you tell us about I guess what your parents had to say, because a lot of our viewers are Asian American, right? And so a lot of our parents have this idea that we need to stay in the medical field or the business field and then stay there for like 40 years, like you were saying. I'm going to do like 40 years of this at this one job that I may not like. So can you tell us about that experience that you had?
Yeah, I would say that I definitely didn't. I just had a discussion about this with somebody recently, but I definitely didn't grow up with typical Asian parents in the sense that education and things like that were pushed upon us to the same extent. My parents are immigrants. They came from Taiwan, and they opened a restaurant when they came over. So my parents were growing up from middle school to high school and obviously elementary school. Like they were working 6 days a week, working 12 to 14-hour days. So I didn't have that same mindset of like, oh, I got to go home after I get off the bus and go home and do my homework. It wasn't like I know a lot of, I guess for the most part, Asian parents would typically work first, then play after. For me growing up, it was play first and then work after. Like I would go to my friend's house right after work, right after class or school, and we would just play, N64, PlayStation, go outside, ride our bikes and rollerblade and things like that. And then after I ate dinner, it's time to crank out some homework. And that was basically it. So I didn't have the same push, I guess, that maybe some other Asian kids that typically will have to deal with. So, I didn't grow up being very academically oriented. I had an okay GPA in high school, good enough to get into Maryland, I guess. And then even when I went to Maryland, I just picked a major based on ruling out everything else. So I ended up picking economics because I was like, I want to be in business, but I was like, I'm too dumb to get in business school. So I just settled into economics. And then the entire time I was in undergrad, my goal was to work at Accenture. That was my dream company for who knows why, for like the recognition, the accolades of working for a big consulting company. And I ended up getting it. I ended up working there. Crazy enough, someone my mom knew has been with the company for like 15 years. So she referred me, and that obviously carried some weight. But I worked there for, I knew within probably the first month that this was not for me. Like I hated it. And then obviously, like I said, I was going through the rehab process myself and then just talking about it back and forth. And then, I mean, like our friends from church back in the day, like Chris Knip and Victor, and they were PTs already. So I talked with them about, do you think that I could do this? Do you think that I would be a good fit for being a PT? And they both were like, yeah, like you have the personality, you have the drive and all that kind of stuff. And then after a lot of careful consideration, I went up to my mom and I told her. She came from work and I was like, Mom, I got to tell you something. And then I made the switch, and she was in shock at first. She was like, why? She was like, you made it. You got the job that you wanted for all these years. You worked for the company you wanted to work for, why do you want to leave? And I told her, I was like, I hate my job. I was like, this thing sucks. I was like, I don't want to work at this company for the next 40 years of my life and not having any purpose behind what I do. So, my mom has never been the type to push anything on me. She, after she kind of got over the initial shock, she was very supportive of it. And, she obviously helped because she paid for my tuition, or she paid for, not my tuition, but she paid for my rent when I was in New Hampshire for grad school and all that kind of stuff. Any food money was coming from her because I wasn't working. So my mom has been fully supportive of that. And without her, I obviously wouldn't be where I am today.
Thank God for good parents like that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I can only imagine that support was so needed when you're making that switch too, because I'm sure it was uncomfortable for you, right? Like you've known the business world for so long, that's what you worked towards, and all of a sudden this switch to a different field altogether. What made you want to work for just Accenture, or like what specifically, why business initially?
I have no real reason, to be honest. I was just, it's just when you're at that age, you don't really think too clearly. At least I didn't when I was 19. I feel like kids are a lot more progressive nowadays. Just for the ones that I talk to, they're a little more forward thinking. But when I was, 18, 19 years old, it was just like, I want to play basketball. I want to hang out with my friends. I want to just do that kind of stuff. And then that's it. Accenture, I guess, was just like a big name that I thought would be cool to have and cool to work for. And when you at Maryland, business is obviously pretty big. Our business school is pretty reputable, and Accenture was one of the big companies that people strive to work for. So I was like, yeah, I want that. So that was pretty much the only minimal thought process I had behind it.
Yeah, I mean, you still play basketball and play video games after work anyway. I'm
Try
sure.
to.
So, knowing you for that long. So can you tell us about a time in your career where you struggled and might have wanted to quit? And then how did you overcome that hurdle?
Not so much in the actual career. I would almost say the pre-career portion of it, as in the grad school portion of it. I was at the bottom of my class, definitely at the bottom of my class. I was on probation for almost my entire first year. So there are a lot of times I was questioning whether or not I would even make it. I went into the third term and I met with the dean, and she was like, if you get anything below the passing score in any class, you are going to have to be forced to restart the program. So that was obviously a significant amount of stress that I had to carry for that entire term. But luckily, through God's grace, I was able to make it through. And second year was so much easier, as you're fully aware as well. So I'm definitely thankful that I was able to make it through, because, there's legitimately times where, and my classmates would definitely understand this, but they knew how stressed I was, because I always had this like weight on my shoulders of like, you have to pass. It wasn't like, for me, it wasn't even like learning. It was more so just like, don't fail. That was my mindset. So it was definitely very challenging, and I'm extremely thankful. And to this day, I never forget about it, because it makes me want to be a better physical therapist and make me appreciate this field so much more. Because school came easy to a lot of my classmates. I had one classmate who had photographic memory, like she knew exactly where things were, and I was like, you're cheating. And school was hard for me. It was very, very hard for me. So I'm to this day, I'm still very thankful for the journey that I went on, because I think it makes me appreciate this field a little more.
I would totally agree. I mean, PT school is not fun. It's the most fun that I never want to have again. That's how I tell people. Because I mean, you get the first of you're stuck with your classmates for 3 years straight, and it's only like a very small class size. How big was your class in New Hampshire? I've never heard.
Oh man, I'm old. Definitely remember.
You're not that old.
35, I think, something like that.
Okay, gotcha. So you're stuck with 35 people for 3 years straight, and like there's not that much change, right? And so while you're with that community, you're still going through a ton of struggle. What was it about PT school? Was it hard? Was this like a sheer volume, or was it just like the way that they taught? Was there anything that you would have changed or would have helped you in that first year?
It's definitely the volume, because it's just nonstop. It's just like, you have a test this week. And I remember when I took my first anatomy test, that was the first test that we had in PT school. I did, I did fine. I got 89. I was like, cool, I'm good. I settled in. I was like, I can do this. And then it's like, but I was able to commit all my time to studying for it. But then then you start having like a quiz here, and then another test. And then you have 2 tests one week. So it's like, you start getting backtracked. And then I think the sheer volume just started eventually catching up with me, which is why I couldn't keep up. And then coming from, economics, like at Maryland, like no joke, I didn't really study. Like I would maybe cram like 48 hours ahead of time, get my B minus and be happy with it. But as you know, that doesn't work in PT school or any type of grad school that, in the medical field or even grad school in general. You just can't cram. That's not the purpose of it. So I basically had to like learn how to study at the age of, 24. For the first time in my life, I had to learn how to study. So it was a very eye-opening experience for me.
Yeah, I remember that cramming in PT school was just not a good idea at
No.
all. We were like, what was it? We had 7 or 8 classes a semester, a test every other week, and if you didn't catch up, you were done. And like that's how it was for like end of PT school for me too. So thank you for sharing that. We have a couple questions from our audience specifically about advice about career changing. What is any advice that you might have for people considering a career change in their mid-20s?
I think so. If you're considering it, obviously you need to weigh the pros and cons. Again, one of my biggest questions that I thought about and reflected upon was what you want to do for the next 40 years of your life. And not to say the next move is going to be the perfect move by any means. It doesn't always work out that way. Some people have multiple career changes. But for me, I was looking for a job that gave me some purpose, that gave me a drive for why I'm here, why God gave me these abilities to do whatever it is that he felt like I was supposed to do. And for me, I always wanted to work with people, and I grew up playing basketball, playing sports, and I wanted to do something along those lines. So after I got hurt myself and kind of going through the whole rehab journey myself, I was like, this would be cool to do. This would be cool to help other people with. And that was it. Something just clicked, and I was like, let's do this. So for me, that was kind of the big pros of why I decided to pursue physical therapy. And I had none of that at my last job. It was what you see on TV, 40 hours a week, sitting in front of a cubicle. I was staring at Excel all day, minimal communication, all that kind of stuff. It wasn't for me. I wear dress shirt, dress pants, dress shoes, hour commute to work every single day, just like no sense of purpose behind what I did. There's a place for it. People need it. It obviously pays the bills, and it's a necessary job for, I don't remember what I did now at this point. But for me, I wanted to work with people. I wanted to help people. And I legitimately love what I do. Going to work every single day. It's really odd to say this, but like, I love going to work every single day. People think I was psychotic for going to work, for wanting to go to work 6 days after my ACL surgery. But for me, it was like, I wanted to get there because it's a fun place to be. I love working with my athletes. A lot of my athletes I still have good relationships with, even though they're graduated from me for, over a year, 2 years now. So it's a big relational aspect that I enjoy also as part of the job. So those are the stuff that I would definitely consider is like, if you feel like this is a job that you can wake up for and be passionate about, those are stuff. And I wouldn't, it's obviously easy to say, but I wouldn't really worry about the finances. A lot of people are like, I got to make X amount of dollars. And yes, obviously finances does play a role into it. But if you legitimately love what you do, like, I believe that the money will come, or you'll figure out a way to make it work.
Gotcha. Yeah, definitely. I think it's definitely a blessing to go to work every single day and be like, I love my job. I feel like a good amount of my friends, they go to work like, oh, okay, it's like a means to an end, right? But to actually have that privilege to go there and be like, I want to be here. I want to be around my patients. I want to be around my coworkers. I love this environment that I am in. It's so rare, and it's so cool that you found that. So thanks for sharing about that. So with the last like half an hour or so, I want to talk about specific questions to your current environment. Can you tell us about your role models and what inspires you currently in your current job?
Yeah, I would say the two biggest role models from a professional standpoint is my mentor Teddy. Some people, I guess, if you are in the PT world, he goes by strength coach therapy. He is the one who took a chance on me when I first came to start to shadow a healthy baller before I even started working there. I literally had like no credentials minus my degree. I think you know this all too well, but it's like people want the extra letters after their name and all this kind of stuff. And I had nothing. All I have is PT, DPT, and that was it. And I had only been working in these kind of traditional models for a couple years. So I was still relatively fresh as a new grad. But for whatever reason, this man took a chance on me. And he said it was because of like the way I communicated and the way that he saw how motivated I was, because I would go and just shadow him after I worked a full day at my last job. So it'd be like working for 9 hours and then go and shadow him for 3 or 4 hours after work. So he was like, it's it's not common for people to do that unless you really, really want this. So I'm to this day, I'm still eternally grateful for the chance that he took on me, because he changed my life. And I tell him that, and it's not an exaggeration, because he could easily just taken it. He easily could have hired someone with better credentials, better grades, all that kind of stuff. But he saw something in me, and I'm grateful for that. And even then, like the first year to year and a half, and even still now, but he took time to mentor me, to teach me, to like mold me into becoming a better physical therapist and also an entrepreneur, constantly pushing me to grow outside of my comfort zone. And like people who know me well know that I'm a very, very, very big introvert. I just don't really like being around people and don't like pushing myself out of my comfort zone. But with this line of work and being an entrepreneur, like you have to be willing to be pushed out of your comfort zone and willing to be in these uncomfortable spots. So it's like, it's crazy to think that in the last 3 years, I've been able to like speak at DPT programs and talk to a lot of students. Obviously like growing my social media and, starting an online business on top of growing my in-person business. Like it's been a crazy, crazy 3 years. And honestly, just because he was willing to take a chance on me. And then secondarily is Matt Boyd, the owner of one of the co-owners of Healthy Baller. Like he's same thing. He mentors me. Anytime I have a question about, why you're doing this and things like that, he's willing to sit down and talk to me and like teach me these different techniques and exercises and things like that. But also just the fact that he's just a good person. I think that I'm a firm believer in surrounding yourself with good people that you can grow with. And he trusts me and I trust him thoroughly. Like we collaborate a lot on late stage rehab. He trusts me with his athletes, and it means a lot because he has a very big name. Like he carries a big name. When he says go to Wesley, people go to me. So I obviously have to uphold my side because he's putting his athletes into my care and my trust. So it's been those two are easily the two most that have influenced my career the most.
Yeah, I think finding mentors are so important to be able to, one, push your skill set, but also to make you grow as a professional. And how did you go about meeting Teddy? Like, how did that mentorship relationship form? I'm just curious.
Yeah. So he actually, I guess long story short, I started my Instagram, my PT Instagram, like in April of 2017. Teddy had already been well established. Like he was kind of already becoming well known in the outpatient world, and I followed him. And then I eventually connected with him because I actually sent one of my late stage ACL growths to him because I was, I talked about all the stuff I couldn't do. So I knew that he could do it. So I sent her to him, and he messaged me. He was like, "Hey, what kind of stuff have you been doing?" And then we just started talking about her. And then I was like, "Hey, do you mind if I come in the shadow?" And that was literally it. He's like, "Yeah, come on." He's like, come on by here. We're 15 minutes away, 10-15 minutes away. He's also in Rockville. So that was literally it. I just started going to shadow. I started there in like probably May, and I went every, 2 or 3 weeks and just kept going back. And then August of that year, 2017, he was like, "I'm ready to hire. I'm ready to expand." And he's like, "You're one of the 3 candidates." And again, thankfully I was the logical choice because one of them was too far. The other one had like a new baby or something like that. And like, just couldn't really take that chance of being in a cash based. So luckily we didn't have a baby yet.
Yes.
So we were able to, and also because my wife does have a very steady job, that we were able to take that chance of going to cash base for, in 2017.
Yeah. Speaking of cash base and entrepreneurships, I have a question for the audience here. So, what are some challenges that are unique to the entrepreneurs in the field of physical therapy?
That's a loaded question. So I think there's a lot. There's really a lot of challenges that it's hard to understand unless you start basically going on the journey yourself. I would say a few of the big ones is the fact that we don't have a constant referral network that a lot of other well-established companies have. Our company as a whole has only been here for 5 years. PT at the company has only been here for 4 years. So it's still relatively new. And you look at other major PT facilities, they've had well-established relationships for years and years and years. So we're combating them. On top of that, we don't take insurance. So, a lot of the normal mentality to have is like, why would I pay you X amount of dollars when I can use my insurance and pay my $30 copay and go to this facility instead? That's the constant battle you're fighting because you have to have to sell the product in a sense. And I hate sounding like a salesman, but I firmly believe our model is better. I know it's better because, you know, we've seen it. Our results are better. But again, not everyone is willing to pay for that level of rehab, you know? And on top of that, so like for the traditional models, and I used to work for models where they were owned by orthopedic surgeons. So we were literally directly affiliated. So for them, you go see the orthopedic surgeon. Okay, you don't need surgery, go to PT, right? So they go right downstairs and start going to PT. Oh, you need surgery? I'm going to do your surgery, blah, 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 whatever it is, go down to our PT. And typically orthopedists will always sell it as, oh yeah, it's so convenient. Like I'm right upstairs. You can always reach out to me, blah, blah, and all that kind of stuff. In my opinion, I think that's garbage. I literally do. Like I rarely communicated with the surgeons that I worked for. And it's wild to say that, but they were 2 floors up and we never really communicated. Yeah, it's just, there's so much I can say about that, but that's my general, I genuinely believe in it. And, you know, at this point, we've been here for about 4 years. We have probably 3 or 4 orthopedists in the area that value what we do and refer people to us. But even then, like I would say the constant battle is like making sure that we're always staying on top of like building relationships. Cause I firmly believe that that's the biggest thing for this model of physical therapy. Like we have coaches now that send us their athletes. We have other strength coaches that'll send us their athletes. Like obviously parents, like when you rehab their kid, you get them back really good. And then one of their teammates goes down. Oh yeah, I work with so-and-so and go to them for physical therapy, you know? So it's just kind of a constant growth mindset where it's like, you just have to constantly be thinking about what's next, as opposed to a traditional model. I never had to worry about marketing. I never had to worry about any of that kind of stuff. I knew my schedule was going to be full. You didn't have to worry about that. I was going to see my 55 to 60 patients a week. It was going to happen. So those are some of the big hurdles, like the marketing aspect, the building relationships, building your caseload. Those are kind of the bigger struggles. And on top of that, I work 7 days a week. You know, I respond to emails. I build my online business. I text parents. I email. I text my kids, my athletes. Like it's a constant work progress. But again, I would never go back. I told my coworkers this the other day. My old job could offer me $200,000 right now, and I wouldn't take it. I would not go back. It's not about the money for me. It's literally just the fact that I have total autonomy over what I'm doing. I have total freedom over what I'm doing. If I feel like seeing people for an hour and a half, I can see people for an hour and a half. So it's a unique model because we can do what we believe is best.
Yeah, that's the thing that's the most challenging about PT, because people have a money mindset and then people have the value mindset, and you have to find the ones who see value, and that ends up actually being the patients that you want to have in your facility anyway, right? So I guess that brings us to the next part of our interview is, what is your biggest takeaway from all of everything that you've learned in your career path so far?
I think the biggest thing is to constantly be growing. Daphne, you've known me for a long time at this point, and I think that you would agree that I'm an introvert. And I think that you understand that at least the younger me was very much like stay in your lane, stay in your comfort zone. Never in a million years would I ever think that I would do any sort of teaching. I would do any sort of like mentoring or any type of that. That's never been anywhere in my realm of thought process. But now, due to, I guess, the following I've gained on social media, and then being able to start like a whole like ACL mastermind group where I'm teaching other PTs and strength coaches how to do rehab. I'm currently have another big project I'm working on, and then also like speaking to other PT programs. Like it's still, again, it's a big blessing for me because I always think back to where I was when I was in PT school. I was that dumb kid who almost failed out of PT school, you know, and I think back to that because it makes me appreciate this field so much more. And I really can't emphasize that enough, which is why I want to keep pushing. And that's why I think that's why I share that a lot, because I know there's other PT students who are struggling just like I did and I continue to do sometimes. But I think that always be willing to grow, always be willing to learn and push yourself out of your comfort zone, regardless of how conservative you may be. And I think particularly for like, I guess the Asian Americans or whatever in us, like we are typically more passive, you know, that's kind of the way that we're raised in a sense. But it's okay to push a little bit. It's okay to challenge a little bit, and it's necessary for like career growth and just as a human being. So definitely don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone and continue learning and work hard. That's probably like the three simple things that I would say.
Gotcha. Thanks for sharing that. I think you're right. As Asian Americans, we tend to not push. We tend to kind of ride the wave and kind of go with the flow, and whatever is the easiest path of least resistance, right? But then here you are with like a ton of followers on Instagram. So I want to kind of dive into that part of your journey. Tell us a little bit about your social media presence. What got you into it? Made you decide to set up your Instagram, and then about your interactions on Instagram as well.
Yeah. So I started it in April of 2017. Again, this goes into my whole mindset of a willingness to put yourself out there. I would say PT Instagrams for the most part, it was not a thing when I was in school. I graduated in 15. It just didn't really exist. Teddy was part of that first initial wave of like medical field influencers, whatever you want to call it. And he started only 6-7 months before I did. So up until like, the middle to end of 2016, these things just didn't really exist. And all of a sudden, like things started popping up and I started seeing people posting stuff and I was like, it'd be kind of cool, I guess. And like when I started, I didn't really have a mindset. I was just like, I'm going to do this because I'm the type of person growing up. I was the type of person that never raised my hand. I didn't want to be wrong. I didn't need to be right. I was just like, I don't want to be wrong. So I just never raised my hand. So this was a time for me to push myself and be like, I'm going to put this content out there. And in a sense, people can judge and ridicule and comment and speak negatively, blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff, So I felt like I needed to do it for the purpose of continued learning. And that thing, when I started in 2017, I remember I told my wife, I was like, it'd be cool to get 5,000 followers. I was like, that'd be a really, really cool thing. And then a close friend of ours that well, Patrick, was like, he told me this a little while. He told me this like after I started. He's like, I don't know why you started. I thought I was stupid, and maybe it was stupid at the time. And I don't have a reason as to why it grew to what it is today. I really don't. I think there's a lot of luck into it. I'm glad that people like it. I'm glad that people appreciate the content that I put out there. Obviously, it is obviously centered around like outpatient sports, ACL rehab, and things like that. And now I'm at the point where I use it to educate people on what I believe PT and sports rehab should look like, because there's still people out there who are going to see PTs who are like Division I athletes, and they're just going around and they're just getting, these passive modalities and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, oh, heat and eat stim, and then you're out the door. And it's like, what are you preparing them for? And then they get injured again. And it's like, why is this happening? Blah, blah, blah. And it's just a cycle. So it's like, I put that out there, not only for other PTs to understand, like students to be like, wow, this is what I want to see, or what I want to do, but also for like athletes who are recovering to like find better quality of care out there. Don't just go to this place because your surgeon tells you that you should go there because this is what we have. There's a financial gain for them. Regardless of whatever they say, there is a financial gain for them because it's money. They own the physical therapy clinic. It's money in their pocket. So yeah, it's just a lot of things that I've been fortunate enough to gain from my social media, that never in a million years would I ever thought was possible. But to this day, I'm still obviously very, very thankful because it's allowed me to grow, also my online business as well.
Gotcha. Shameless plug for Wesley. We'll put his link down below to follow him on Instagram, guys. He's got some really good content. I use his content all the time for my ACL patients. Thank you. And also my patients come up to me and they're like, do you know Dr. Wesley Wang from Maryland? When they find out I'm from Maryland, because I have like Maryland stuff on my wall. And I'm like, yeah, out of all the PTs, I do know Dr. Wesley Wang. And they're like, wow, he's so cool. So you've reached all the way to the West Coast, Wes. That's awesome.
You can tell them that I used to park my car outside your house when your mom would drive me and your brother back to school. So you can go all the way back that far.
Oh yeah, it's been farther than that too.
I know.
I've been since I was 12. So put that into perspective. So along those Instagram lines, someone asked if you, because of your large following, do you feel like you get recognized in public? Do people like freak out like, oh my God, it's Dr. Wang on Instagram, blah, blah,
blah. I've been recognized like a couple times. It's not very frequently. The weirdest one ever to this day. And my two closest, one of my closest friends was with me on a trip. We were in Atlanta at the aquarium of all places. We finished watching like the dolphin exhibition, and I was like, we're leaving the exhibition, and then this dude just tapped me on my shoulder and was like, "Are you Wesley?" And I was like, "Cool, this is really random." So to this day, he still gives me so much crap for it. And he was like, "I'll never let you forget that." But the only time I've ever, I guess the other times I've been recognized was we went to CSM a couple years ago. But that's like all PT people. So like that's a little bit different, I guess, because it is public, but it's all a bunch of PT nerds in the same area. So it's a little bit different.
I feel that. I mean, your name in the PT world now is so well known. All my classmates who you are, so that's awesome. Congratulations, Les. You definitely have broke the mold in terms of even being an Asian American on social media and seeing your success gives a lot of people within our community a lot of hope and a lot of drive to be where you are. So that's great. So with that being said, we have like 15 more minutes left and a couple of audience questions have come up. So one of them is specifically to our field. What are your thoughts on residency for our specializations and getting certifications, things like that?
So yeah, this is probably a really common question I get asked. I don't have any of that. So I think it really just depends. I think the end, again, you need to be asking yourself what the end goal is. Do you want to work with athletes? Do you want to work with pro athletes and all that kind of stuff? I don't personally believe you need them. I don't think they're a necessity by any means. For me, this is my dream setting. Like I never really had aspirations of working with pros on a regular basis. Like I get the occasional pro athlete that comes in here. But I don't, it's not something I sought after. I wanted to work with more high school and college level athletes, and I get to do that every single day. And I don't have my OCS. I don't have my SCS. I don't have any other letters after my name except for PT, DPT. That's all I have. But I think that if you wanted to open up a business, like kind of like what we've done, then I don't think you necessarily need it. And I think the way that I typically will ask it is that if you ask any layman person who's outside of the PT world, like your parents or your siblings or your friends, they don't know what the heck an OCS is or an SCS, right? You go to a person's bio. And that's what I always thought was funny, because when I was in PT school, I wanted to have the alphabet after my name. I wanted, 6 certifications. I wanted to be really cool and blah, blah, and all that kind of stuff. But then you think about it, you go to a website and you look at your biography and you have PT, DPT, OCS, SCS, whatever else you have after your name. They don't know what the heck that means. Nobody knows what that means. So there's some certifications I don't even know what it means. And I'm in the field. So I think it comes down to what you feel like is value and what you feel like is going to help you get to where you want to be. If you feel like you want to be more like on the entrepreneur side, then personally, I don't think it's necessary, because the year to 2 years you'll be spending doing your OCS and SCS could be spent learning the business side of things, which I feel like is even more important than the skills that you'll be learning in OCS, SCS, because you can learn all that outside of it without having those specific letters after your name.
I feel like after a while too, you'll get a ton of certifications that doesn't fit on your business card anymore. And then that's when it's a lot. But I feel like it depends too, right? Because I feel most of my experience has been learning from people around me. And I feel like that's the most beneficial. I just learn by doing. Another question for you from Katie is, how do you balance wearing so many hats? And do you have a virtual assistant? And what is your work-life balance like? 3-part question.
Yeah. The first year of going into like this entrepreneur side, there was no work-life balance. It was just work. I was constantly stressed because it was like, how do I get to financially where I want to be and where I was? Because my first year working in cash base, I took probably about a $30,000 pay cut. I was getting paid really well at my last job. And then to take this chance of being in an environment where I was getting paid per patient that I was seeing versus this like set salary that I had. So it was obviously a big chance to take, but again, we weighed the pros and cons. We had money saved up, we're pretty financially responsible. My wife had a steady job, blah, blah, and all that kind of stuff. So now I'm a little over 3 years in, and I would say my work-life balance is like significantly better. Like today, one of my close friends is coming over. We're just going to like kick it. We're going to watch football and hang out, but it's definitely like something that I still wrestle with sometimes. There are days I work more than others. I do not have a virtual assistant. But it's a matter of just like prioritizing time. I've had to figure things out along the way. I used to literally come home, eat dinner, hop on my computer, and then obviously that wasn't great for my life balance as far as hanging out with my wife and things like that. So, a lot of times I would come home from work, eat dinner with her. Maybe we'll just like watch TV, hang out, whatever it is. And then if she goes to sleep, then I'll spend another hour and a half to 2 hours on my computer the rest of the night, like doing some of my online stuff. And Saturdays usually a pretty big day to get some work done as well. Usually try to do stuff in the morning until like 3 or 4 o'clock, and then just shut it down for the day. And that's usually the balance that I've been able to find that's worked pretty well.
Gotcha. So at least you have time for yourself and you have time to have your career, and that way you don't get burnout too, right? Which is, I feel like, is so important. Another question is, they talk a lot about the glass ceiling or the bamboo ceiling for Asian Americans. Have you ever encountered that in our field as a physical therapist, or in your journey, I guess?
Interesting. I mean, I think in our field, I would say like the representations of Asians is not very high. Particularly when you look around like social media and things like that. It's just like, I mean, it's just not super prevalent by any means. So I do recognize that I am in a unique situation of representing Asian Americans in like the medical profession. Obviously, like I would say like maybe MDs is a little more prevalent for Asian Americans to be in, but like, I don't know, I guess PTs in general is still relatively new-ish as a field, or it's a growing field, I would say, is probably the better answer. But as far as that ceiling goes, maybe, we talked about how Asian Americans typically are a little bit more passive in the sense it's like not willing to push outside your comfort zone. I do feel like it's gotten significantly better. I'm older than you, Daphne, by a little bit, but even then I'm like a decade older than some of the students that are in PT school now. And I feel like just with, I guess, being in America for a little bit longer and social media and all that kind of stuff, like kids are growing up a little bit faster and understanding that like, hey, I can grow a little more. I can push myself a little more than maybe compared to when we grew up, So I do think people are recognizing that like us as Asian Americans, like we're not supposed to be just that passive standby Asian Americans that maybe what it was 15, 20 years ago when I was growing up. I think that it's a different generation now. It really is. I don't say it to sound like an old person, but it's the reality of what it is. I even went back to talk to my high school teacher, like 7-8 years after I graduated, and she said the same thing. She was just like, it's a different generation from when you guys were here. And I think like technology, social media, all that kind of stuff has played a big role into some of these people growing up a little more.
Gotcha. Yeah, I feel like as Asian Americans, we don't, but I guess in our generation, we never really talked about being vocal, right? And putting ourselves out there. But now that there's so much opportunity to do so, I think it's opened a lot of doors. Do you have advice on how to hype yourself up to change careers from another audience member?
I guess the answer would be that if it's a field that you are genuinely passionate about, then the hype will be there. Like for me, when I was going through it, yes, when I made the decision, I was like, this is the decision that I'm going to be making that's going to affect the next 5 years of my life. Because I had to do 2 years at community college. So obviously the portion of community college was a big grind, but you just break it up in chunks. Like I was like, I'm going to be at community college for 2 years. And then the next big thing is to apply to PT school. So like the first year I was like, I'm just going to prepare myself. And then you start applying. And then once you start applying, it starts becoming more real, and then you actually get into PT school and then it's like very real. And then you go through that grind. So I think, and it goes by way faster than you think it will. 5 years obviously sounds like a long time, and it is a long time. But the whole time I had the end goal in mind, which was to be a physical therapist. That was always the end goal. So I think that if the end goal is something that you're passionate about, then like you hopefully should feel hyped and kind of like embrace the grind, basically.
Gotcha. Yeah, it seems like a lot, but when you do break it up in chunks, it's definitely more manageable and it flies by so quickly. Like before you know it, you've been practicing for how long? You've been practicing for now? Like 7 years? 5 or 7?
5 and a half.
Years. Yeah, and that I'm sure that flew by, right?
Yeah.
So another question from an audience member: is Instagram paying you to create posts at this point?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Okay. And then, so for being well known in the PT world, what contributed to your success the most, and what made you stand out from other PTs in the field?
what do I think contribute to my success? I guess that's a weird question. I think that there's a lot of luck and fortune to where I'm at today. Again, I told you that Teddy took a chance on me. He didn't have to. He really didn't have to. So had he not taken a chance on me, I have no idea where I would be, 5 years down the line at this point. So there's some luck involved. There's a lot of hard work that's involved. I do believe, for me, from a spiritual standpoint, like I believe God opened that door for me, and I thankfully happened, because there's no fathomable reason about why he took a chance on me. Like, really, there is none. If he just, honestly, even if he put like a random thing on his Instagram, was like, hey, I'm looking for a new PT, like he would have got, hundreds of DMs about people who are far more qualified than me to work there. But thankfully enough, I was able to do that, and I was able to get to Healthy Baller. So, a lot of luck, a lot of hard work, I guess, is probably the biggest thing as far as like what contributed to my success, and success is relative. And as far as standing out from PTs, I think for me, and what I try to use my social media platform is, I want it to be educational. That's probably the biggest thing. I'm very passionate about like the sports ACL world. And I think that it's still a very, very mismanaged and misunderstood portion of rehab. And that's what I want to use my social media for. There's a lot of other PTs that I follow and that I've like kind of grown along with, and they've grown bigger than me, because, I think that some of them got a little bit clickbaity and got away from what I believe is true to why they started it in the first place. But it's their account. They can do whatever they want with it. I try not to be very commercialized on mine. I don't really promote any products or anything like that. As opposed to, the people are promoting like Vivo Barefoot and a bunch of other other affiliations and things like that. And the only in 3.5 or almost 4 years of having my account, the only affiliation I have right now is with PT Final Exam, which is like it's like what's it called? A prep course for the boards, because I took it and it helped me. And that's the only affiliation I have in 4 years. People have asked to promote products and all that kind of stuff, and I honestly just ignore them, because it's just like, that's not why I started my Instagram in the first place. So I think that to a certain extent maybe makes me stand out a little bit too, good or bad, who knows, but that's just another way of making maybe why I stand out. And I think specifically for ACL rehab, I'm definitely not afraid to blast people, because I think that, people piss me off about the way they handle ACL rehab, and it's just, people think it's exaggerating when I say it, but I generally believe that ACL rehab is one of, if not the hardest outpatient injury that we see. And legitimately, you can ruin somebody's life if you screw it up. And I don't think the majority of people view it that way, but that's what I generally believe, because if you tear it once and you suck at rehab, you might tear it again, and then you tear it again, and then who knows what's going to happen, So that's, I guess maybe that's a way where I stand out, where I'm very vocal about like the ACL rehab world.
Yeah, I'm sure. And as you should be, because also you're going through it yourself. And then people have a lot of misinformation out there. Like if you do a terminal knee extension 1 week post, your knee will explode, right?
It will. I've done it already.
Oh yeah. Has it exploded? Do you still have it?
It did. It's gone. I got to get surgery again.
Okay. Gotcha. So different kind of rehab from then on out, right?
Yeah.
So with the last 5 minutes of our interview, Wesley, what are some final tips and advice you can give our audience about PT in general, and about the switch that you had, and just anything that might come to mind?
Yeah. If there are PTs out there who are listening, I think that not settling is the biggest thing. Like, don't just go into work for like those factory places because you think that that's what you're supposed to do. I do think there's a place for it. Like, I think that, honestly, in my opinion, I think every new grad should do it for like a year, because you could see the other side. You can see what it's like to work in that type of model and why it isn't the best. Are there places who take insurances that are great? Yes, 100%. There are places even near us that we refer people to, because they don't want to pay out of pocket. And we understand that there's a financial aspect to it too. So we have relationship with facilities nearby that we trust and value. But for the most part, there are still major PT companies, major PT companies out there that are still giving this like generic vanilla quality of care that just like get in and out. And to be honest, like, the people are getting better because it's almost like a regression to the mean. You just get better over time, And, it sucks because people go to those places because they're more reputable, they're more well known. A lot of surgeons send people to them, blah, blah, all that kind of stuff. And I hate it. So I think that being willing to, I guess, like, grow what you believe is right in physical therapy is huge. And I came to this model because I believe this is always what I had in my mind about what I believe physical therapy should look like. It should be an hour. It should be, like, consistent quality of care, as opposed to like, hey, like, go do your exercises over there with the tech, and then I'll see you in 15 minutes and give you the next set of exercises. And that's the model that's currently still out there, very much so. And as far as like anyone in other fields, like, I can't really stress enough, like, find a career path that you are passionate about. And as you said earlier, definitely, like, you have peers who don't enjoy what they do. And it's weird because I know you love your job too. And it's like, sometimes I feel bad for being like, I love my job. But I think it's such a blessing to be able to wake up every day and go to this job that you enjoy. I know you love your coworkers too. And it's like, that's a cool thing too. It's not just your job. You love working the environment with being with your coworkers. And that's something that I genuinely believe, like, you cannot put a price on. So yeah, that's at least what I believe is, I guess, like, last minute advice for people who may be considering a career switch, because it is scary. I don't want to say that I wasn't scared or worried about, like, if I would even make it. And again, the financial aspect of, like, foregoing 5 years of salary to take on 5 years of debt, that's the decision that I made. So yeah, these are tough decisions that I'm happy I made. But I also, like, share my journey with people because I think that if I can do it, as cliche as it is, if I can do it, then anyone can do it, as long as you're willing to work for it.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Wesley. I think it's such a valuable lesson to take away because a lot of us are wary about taking these massive steps. A lot of us are wary to break the mold and go into something that we might not believe might work. And I feel like you've definitely found that journey, found that path, and then here you are loving what you do. And that's the hope you can get for working at a place 40 hours a week. You're there for the majority of your day, right? Why would you want to waste that time not enjoying your job and not enjoying your coworkers and not feeling like you can make a difference? So thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate that. I learned a lot today. Any last minute shout outs you want to give in our last couple minutes?
No, not really. Yeah, again, I think, thanks for having me on, Daphne. I guess for those of you who don't know, I've known Daphne for more than half my life, probably since I was in high school.
Oh yeah.
Right. And I grew up with her brother too. So, I thank you for having me on, Daphne. It's been cool. Just honestly, even watching you grow in your career too. To this day, I joke about it all the time, but I still think of you as little Daphne, but you're not that little anymore. You are an adult now, regardless of how I view you. You're still little Daphne to me, but you are an adult now.
To be fair, I'm still 5'3", so I'm still pretty, like, little size.
Yes.
But I think in terms of career growth, you see me grow from oh my God, middle school up until my career. So it's been great watching you as well, Wesley. Thank you so much. Again, if you guys haven't already done it, please smash that like button, hit subscribe so you don't miss any more content from us. We're going to have a lot more on this career series coming up. And then Wesley, thank you so much again. We loved having you.
No problem. Thanks for having me, Daphne.
All right, sweet.